Welcome to day one of this 14-day series where we'll be first creating a brand new sourdough starter from scratch and then using it to bake some delicious San Francisco style sourdough bread. If you're starting this on March 23rd, 2020 along with me, then we're going to be going through the steps together, and I'm happy to adjust the course based on questions and feedback as we go along. If you're watching it after that, then still use the comments to ask any questions and I'd be happy to try and help. First things first though, what exactly is Sourdough Starter? Well, there are plenty of places out there that dig into the details and the science of it, but for the purposes of this starter series video, we'll just leave it at a high level and say that it's a living culture made from flour and water. The science happening within this culture is going to result in bubbles being formed as it eats away through the flour. These bubbles are what allow your bread to rise. If it were just about making bread rise though, you could use commercial baker's yeast. Sourdough Starter does a lot more than that though. It produces complex flavors that simply aren't possible with baker's yeast. And that's not even getting into the digestive health benefits of using sourdough. But I digress. I promise to keep it simple, so we'll just leave it there for now. So how do you get a starter? Well, there are three main ways. First, it could be handed down in the generations of your family. I absolutely love hearing stories about people baking with sourdough starter that their great-grandparents baked with. There's just something extra special about that. Unfortunately, I wasn't lucky enough to have a story at starter like that in my family. So that brings us to number 2. Beg, borrow, or buy. Sourdough starters grow every day, and you only need a tiny bit of it to branch off a new starter. While there's plenty of places to buy starter online, I found that local sourdough enthusiasts or bakeries are usually more than happy to give you a bit to spread the sourdough love. And that's actually how I got my main starter that I use most often. And I actually just realized when I went to find this picture that it was 2 years ago to the day that I picked up this little beauty from the world-renowned Acme Bakery in the San Francisco Bay Area. After freezing it for the return flight, I gave it a good feed when I got back to the UK, and it's been a champ raising loaves for me every week since. But that brings us to the final way to get a sourdough starter. Just make your own. While it doesn't have the romantic history of a family heirloom, it's got a new story that's just waiting to be written. And if you're doing this series live with me right now, that will be quite a story to tell when you hand down your starter to the next generation and tell them how you made it when you were stuck at home during a global pandemic. Okay, so that brings us nicely on to what we're going to do today. So this being day 1, we're going to ease into it slowly and go over the things you're going to need along the way. I'm going to separate this into a must-have list and a nice-to-have list. The first thing that you're going to realize is that there's very few things on the must-have list. Most of us are stuck at home right now anyway, and that's fine because you probably have everything on this list already in your kitchen. So let's get straight to the must-have list. First up, flour. Okay, that's an obvious one, right? But you've got to make sure that it's not bleached flour or self-rising flour. If you've got that covered, then that's really all you need. But ideally, you'd have a bag of stone ground wholemeal or whole wheat flour to kick things off, as well as some non-bleached white all-purpose or strong white bread flour that we'll be transitioning to along the way. Next, you'll need a container for your starter. This can either be a glass or food-safe plastic container, but make sure that you have a way to close it without making it airtight. With masonry jars, you can simply remove the rubber gasket. With my favorite containers like this one, you can simply not lock them. If all else fails, use cling film to cover whatever container you have and you'll be fine. And that's it. See, so you probably already have these two things and there's absolutely no excuse why you can't finally learn how to make sourdough bread at home. Now on to the nice to have list. First up, a scale. Now this one really probably should have been on the must have list, but I just didn't want to scare anyone off from proceeding if you don't already have one. You certainly can create a starter without a scale, but when it comes to actually making bread, you'll make life extremely hard on yourself if you don't have one and have to rely on volumetric measurements. So please do yourself a favor if you don't already have one and pick one up over the next week. Just about any will do. Next, a silicone spatula. These tend to work best for mixing your starter each day without having it stick. Next, a second container. I like to mix a starter in one container and then pour it into the final container. It keeps things a bit cleaner and makes it easier to see exactly where it starts and peaks as it grows. Next, a simple rubber band. By marking the container with a rubber band after you feed it, you can easily tell exactly how much it's grown at any given time. Next, filtered water. It depends on your local water source and whether this one is really needed. Sometimes there's a lot of chlorine or other elements in tap water that can interfere with a starter growth. If you have a simple water filter like this, great. Otherwise, don't worry too much as you should be fine with tap water once you finally establish your starter. I would, however, recommend that you either use filtered or bottled water for this first critical week if at all possible. Next, an oven with a light-only mode. This will allow you to raise the temperature from your normal room temperature ever so slightly, which can greatly help with the starter taking hold. Just make sure that no one accidentally turns on the oven, as the heat can easily kill your starter. When I do this at my house, I literally put a piece of tape over the controls just to make sure no accidents take place. On the topic of temperature, the last one is an instant read thermometer. It's a great tool to let you know exactly what the temperature of the environment is, as well as to help you adjust the temperature of the water that you feed it with along the way. Okay, so that's it. We've just about reached the end of the first video, and you'll have until tomorrow to gather what you need to get going. Depending on where you are in the world, you might be seeing this video come out a bit late in your day. I apologize for that, and I'm going to fix that for future videos by skipping ahead a half a day. So while you're gathering what you need for tomorrow, I'll be shooting the video the evening before. Then I'll aim to have each video out by 8 AM UK time. Creating a series on YouTube is all new to me though, so please do forgive me if it doesn't go quite according to plan. So before I go, I have two big asks for everyone that's watching this on March 23rd or March 24th, 2020. Firstly, please share this video with anyone and everyone that you think might be interested in starting this adventure with us. While the series will stay up for anyone that wants to see it in the future, it's going to be a lot more fun if we have a big group of family and friends doing it along with us. The second ask is simply, please give me suggestions on what you want to make sure that I cover over the next 2 weeks and how I can improve the videos in general. Okay? Well, that's it for day one then. I'm really excited to be starting this adventure with you, and I really hope you are as well. I'll see you tomorrow.